Hello, this is Dr. Flight. This segment is going to cover what a new product is and what an innovation is as it relates to the product development process and how it can impact the firm. One of the ways we mark the quality of our lives and the quality of our community is through the innovations and the products that we use. When a new innovation comes along, what it means is that it completely changes how we might do something or how a need might be met for us. If you consider many of the very important innovations over the last 100 years or so, we can list among those items like personal computing, the microwave, photocopier technology, the VCR, of course, barcoding, and so forth. There are many new product ideas that are derived from innovation or technology changes that have revolutionized sort of how we live and how we work. The World Wide Web, of course, is one of the innovations from the last 15 to 20 years that has completely changed how we communicate with each other, how we receive information, how we send information out, and so forth. It's a little bit like the Gutenberg press and how important that the movable press was to being able to communicate ideas through written form. So if you look through this list, you'll see any number of very major significant technologies that have created a whole industry in and of themselves. With that said, we're not done yet. There are plenty of more opportunities to develop new products through new innovations that are emerging even today. If you just think about the different types of technologies that are happening, you'll think of new products that could be created in the area of increased data storage, processor speeds, which allow us to have computing technologies that are in much smaller form. So what we hold in our hand today in a cell phone has as much computing power as whole rooms full of computers only 30 or 40 years ago. Mobile technologies, being able to access data remotely. Again, we're able to connect with each other in a mobile sense, which is allowing us to create new products and new ways to communicate with each other. Technologies that are associated with virtual and augmented reality, 3D printing, artificial intelligence, smart machines, and intelligent software that learns is on the cutting edge of creating a lot of really interesting automated types of products for us. Medical field technologies with gene therapy and cell regeneration, being able to regenerate and grow tissues and organs artificially and then being able to use those. Self-driving vehicles, which again tie into highly complex computer algorithms and smart or intelligent software that can learn, as well as incorporating a lot of data storage and processing speed capabilities is certainly there. And then finally, self-generated consumer products and content. So much of what we do online, especially in the social media realm, deals with consumers actually generating and creating products for them to not only consume, but for others to consume as well. So here's a list then of cutting edge technologies that are emerging as we speak. And these types of technologies have the capability of creating whole new product categories for us when we consider what we might do next and how we might have our needs met differently through the use of new products. So this brings us to this idea that new product ideas can come from lots and lots of different sources. We're going to talk about this more in subsequent segments, but it's good to keep an idea that, or have the idea that new product ideas will emerge from inside your company, from employees, from staff, also though from competitors who are outside the company, from customers, from technology. So just doing research and development, lab work, can certainly create some type of a new innovation or technology, which then can be put into a product. And sometimes, believe it or not, new product ideas happen by accident. So there's this term called serendipity, right? A serendipitous occasion or event is one where an accident happened, but it happened to a prepared mind. And so over time, there have certainly been cases where products have been developed and were created through new technologies, but they weren't necessarily anticipated. Consider, if you will, microwave ovens. Percy Spencer was working at Raytheon in a large room, and in that large room, they were using different magnetrons, which created waves of energy. And while he was working, he discovered and realized that the candy bar that was in his pocket was slowly melting. And upon further investigation, he realized that he was in fact creating a microwave. That's how that was discovered. Really quite by accident, but a huge breakthrough nonetheless. Aspartame, another example. So the sweetener that you might find in NutraSweet, aspartame was discovered by a chemist at G.D. Searle, and upon creating some different chemical compounds for food ingredients, his fingers accidentally touched some of the materials they were working on, and he realized that those were sweet, that it was a sweet taste, and eventually that led to aspartame. Some other interesting examples, we have penicillin. Right, so penicillin was a medicine that was found to be fungus curing, a chemical again, compound that worked biologically. Wasn't an expected finding, but it turned out to be a miraculous cure for a lot of illnesses. Scotchgard, another example where we have a chemist who was working in the lab, accidentally spilled some chemical on her shoes, Patsy Sherman, and after a few weeks taking the shoes home and working with them and so on and so forth, she noticed that where the chemical had spilled, there was no more stain. So Scotchgard was then created from that type of serendipitous result. Finally, Teflon, another example of how Roy Plunkett was working at DuPont, researching different chlorofluorocarbons, and discovered this substance that, when reacted to, was extremely slick or smooth or slid very easily, and therefore created the underpinnings for the development of Teflon. So you can see how ideas can come from lots of different places, from, again, outside the firm, inside the firm. They can even come by accident. You never really know when a great idea may emerge or may come. Each of these examples, though, illustrate how something new was created through a technology, and because that technology was developed, it allowed a whole line of new products to come out which solved problems in a new way. Whenever we solve something in a new way, or we do something new for the first time, we think of that thing as being innovative. So something new, something not done in the past, something new to us would be something that we think of, or we would call, an innovation. So when we think about innovations, we can look at the definition of an innovation and know that it's something that is new, but not only that, it's something that's perceived to be new. This something can be physical, like a product, a tangible product, or it could be a service, or it could be some process that we use, or it could be some type of an idea. The important thing here, though, is that it's a perception that somebody has that it's new to them, that it hasn't ever been used before or done before. It's something new. So that brings us to this notion of how we define new. What is new, and how can we use this idea of new within innovation to develop new products? When we look at new, we want to look at this concept of discontinuity. So discontinuity is a term that we sometimes use, and it deals with how behavioral change happens and how behavior might be interrupted when a new innovation or a new product is introduced to a person's routine or habit. So the concept of discontinuity then, or the term discontinuity, specifically relates to the degree of behavioral change that's required in order for something new to be adopted. So if you look at the chart down below here, the line graph, we have at one end, we have continuous, and on the other end of it, we have discontinuous. So if my behavior continues, even after I use a new product, then I have little behavioral change. And so that type of a product would most likely be accepted and adopted fairly quickly, and it would be accepted in a marketplace fairly rapidly because somebody could adopt the new product and not have to experience a lot of behavioral change. On the other end of the spectrum, though, if a product has a lot of what we call discontinuity, then what it means is that in order for a person to adopt a new product or technology or innovation, if they have to go through a lot of behavioral change to do so, their behavior has been discontinued from what they were doing before, therefore discontinuous. So another way we can think about newness, or another way we can think about how significant or how radical or how different an innovation is based on behavioral change. If a new product or new technology comes out that forces me to make a lot of behavioral changes in order to accept it, then we call it discontinuous. That's where that term comes into play specifically here. So discontinuity then, as you can imagine, is inversely related to the adoption of something new. So we have the level of discontinuity here, and how that impacts the rate of adoption for an innovation is negative. The more discontinuous something is, so the more discontinuous something is, the less likely I will be to adopt the product. It's worth mentioning that discontinuity as we move forward is a key term, and it can happen at two different functional levels when we think about developing new products. It can happen in the firm. So like if a firm or organization does something new, they create a new product themselves or they use a new process, then that process or that new product is new to the firm and requires them to behave in a different way. Therefore, it's relatively discontinuous. If the product or service or the innovation is new to a market and it makes the market change their behavior in some way, then it could be discontinuous to them as well. So discontinuity is a term that happens both at the firm level and also at the market level. Okay, let's move on now. We're going to talk a little bit about definitions of a new product. So as you look at new products, we typically think of them as falling into one of 6 different categories. So if I was going to take a new product and I was going to analyze the new product, I was going to think about how I would describe it, there would be 6 different ways to do so. The first is something called new to the world. Sometimes we call this radically different, radically new, or really new. These are products that don't happen or they don't occur very often. We see 10% of new products as being new to the world, and they tend to create a whole new market. So breakthrough technologies produce new to the world products, and new to the world products are highly discontinuous. They create and they require a lot of behavioral change in order to adopt them. Another type of innovation is something that's simply new to the firm. So this might be a product that already exists. It might be a product that others are already making, but it would be new for the firm to create it and adopt it. Therefore, it's new to the firm. Okay, so this might be, again, a product that already exists out there, but the firm you're thinking about, the firm you work for maybe, doesn't currently produce that or that product, so it would be new to them. Additions to existing product lines is one of the most common forms of new product development. 26% of new products are additions to existing product lines. So these would be products that assist or help your existing product line. There might be small modifications to existing products, but the product fundamentally changes. However, the name and the brand typically stays the same, and you extend the line of the product by making new ones. Improvements and revisions to existing products is a 4th category that we can talk about. Again, it's a very large one. This would be where we have an existing product, but we do something different to it. We make something new that adds value to the product itself. So we take a current product and we generally make it better. Again, another 26% or a quarter of all new products fall into this category. All right, our last 2 categories of new products are repositionings. So a repositioning is when we take an existing product and we find some new use for it. So we, in essence, find a new market that would buy the product and use the product for some other purpose than it was originally intended for. So a repositioning is when we take the product and we use it for some other use other than what it was naturally, originally used for. The last product category here is one that the customer may never ever see. It's actually something called a cost reduction, and a cost reduction happens when we engage in a new process or we find a way to lower the cost to produce the product or service. Now, the customer may never see this as a new product. They might not view it as a new product or a product change, but the firm certainly will, and the firm can decide whether they want to reduce the price of the product because their cost to produce the product has also gone down, or they can choose to keep their price the same and realize more profit every time they sell one unit of good. Okay, so cost reductions then are an internal type of a item that will typically be seen by the firm, may or may not be seen by the customer, and it's an example of how firms can create efficiency in what they're doing. All right, so that wraps up what we are working on in this particular area. Just in summary, we talked a little bit about what an innovation was, how an innovation is defined, and how it's something that's perceived as being new. I introduced the concept of discontinuity and how discontinuity is a measure of behavioral change. And if your behavior has to change, then your former behavior is discontinued. And as a result, whatever the product is or the innovation or technology is, it'll take longer for that to be adopted because it's requiring the end user to do more and making them change in order to be able to use it. We have different ideas of where products or innovations come from, inside the firm, outside the firm, and we have a number of radically new product ideas and products that have come from that have existed in the past and that we're currently engaged in now as we move forward in the future. Finally, we talked about 6 different new product types, ranging from radically new products to all the way to cost savings and products that represent some type of new efficiency that was created in a process. Okay, so that wraps up this segment on what an innovation is, what a new product is, and how they fit into the new product development process.